We want to test the transaction we created in the previous steps. To do so, GNexus will first need to create the application database, and immediately after that, in order to store the customer transaction data, the associated table will have to be created in that database. Then the transaction program, the executable, will have to be built and uploaded to the web server so that we can test it in our browser. This cycle, in which a developer models, builds, and tests before having the application ready for production, is called prototyping. Now, how do we run it? Under the Build option of the menu, we have the Run option that we can also run by pressing F5. When we do this, we see that in the output window, GNexus starts to report what it is doing. The first thing it does is known as Database Impact Analysis, which concludes with a report called Impact Analysis. Here, it shows the impact that the new definitions made in the knowledge base will have on the database structure. Here, it informs us that the database tables will be created. On the left, we see the name of the table, Customer, and on the right, the specification of what it will have to do in relation to that table. It informs us that it will have to be created, and that its structure will be composed of these attributes, with these data types. It will also create an index on that table using the customer ID attribute, which is the key attribute. We'll understand this better later in the course. Since we agreed to create this table with this definition in the database, we press the Create button. After that, GNexus generates the programs to create the database and the customer table. Then it runs them. So when it finishes, if there were no errors, the database with the customer table is effectively created. Here, it informs us that the database reorganization was successful. And then GNexus continues its work, now generating the application programs. That is, it will generate all the necessary lines of code in the selected programming language to have the application executable. Specifically, the customer transaction ready for inserting, updating, and deleting. As we go through this process, it will inform us object by object of the generation results. This is shown in the navigation view window, where we see the report for all the objects that were generated. The first one is the one we expected, the customer transaction. It informs us, among other details, that the source program was created in .NET language, that it will work on the customer table, and that it will perform insert, update, and delete operations on it. It also generated these other auxiliary programs. One of particular interest to us is this last one, GX0010, which appears listed in the customer transactions navigation list as prompts. We'll understand that shortly. Once the entire build process finishes, it informs us that the run was successful and opens a window listing all the executable objects, which for the moment is only one, the customer transaction. To run it, we just click here. We'll see that a browser window opens with the running application. Here we see the screen that allows us to insert, update, and delete customers, which reflects the web layout of the transaction. Let's enter the data of our first customer. We'll identify them with number 1. Press the Tab key and enter John as the customer's name. His last name is Smith. He lives at this address. His phone number is this. And his email address is jsmith@example.com. Now we press the Confirm button, and a message notifies us that the data has been successfully added to the database. While the form has been cleared, we're ready to enter a new record. Our second customer will be identified with number 2. Her name is Susan. Her last name is Brown. Her address is this, her phone number, and her email. Let's press confirm. And again we see the message indicating that the data has been successfully added. Now, if in the ID field we enter an ID already existing in the database and press tab, for example, the one we have just created, it retrieves all the data for that customer. And we could edit some details from here. For example, let's say we entered the wrong email. We'll change it to isbrown.example.com. A message will confirm that the customer's data has been successfully updated. We can also use the buttons above to navigate between customers, going for example to the next, the previous, the last, or the first one. Or using select. Open this selection list that shows all customers in the table so we can choose one, allowing us to filter if we know any details. The selection list then lets us edit the desired record. This selection list was automatically implemented by GNexus. It's the object we saw listed in the navigation as GX0010. We'll find it in the KB Explorer, and we could even modify it. For now, there's nothing else we need to know. Of course, we can also delete a customer. By clicking on the delete button, we'll see a message confirming that the deletion was successful. In fact, if we now open the selection list, customer 2 is no longer there. And if we type 2 in the ID field, we'll see the form is empty. Let's insert it again from scratch. Where did GNexus create the database, and in which web server did it upload the application we were running? We didn't explicitly configure anything, and it didn't ask us anything either. GNexus offers us the possibility to prototype and run our application both locally as well as in a cloud. If we don't explicitly indicate that we want to prototype in the cloud, then GNexus will default to local prototyping. This means that the database will be on our machine and the executable programs will be on a local web server that is on our machine. On the other hand, if we prototype in the cloud, since the database and programs will be hosted in the cloud, we could share the application URL with other members of our team so that they can also test the prototype from anywhere with an internet connection. Let's see where local or cloud prototyping is configured. In the Preferences window, we'll see that here we have all the information related to the application we're developing for the .NET environment, which was the default language selected when we created the KB. Specifically, we'll see a node to configure the backend settings of the application, and another for the front end. In the backend, logically, we'll find, among other things, everything related to the web server, as well as the database, which we had left with the default value when we created the KB, which was SQL Server. If we click on the default generator while the properties window is visible, we'll see, among all the options under this group, the Deploy to Cloud property. By default, it's set to No, which means local execution using the web server set in the web server property. Note that the web root shows localhost. The web server root value is clearly shown here. After the slash is the name of the transaction object. To run in the GNexus cloud, we should change the Deploy to Cloud property to Yes. And the next time we run the application, the web server and database installed in the cloud will be used. We're going to leave the default values, meaning that as long as we don't need to share the application over the internet, we'll use local prototyping.